So there's operating model and talent transformation issues to contend with, as roles like chief AI officer, chief data officer, and CISO intersect with CIO responsibilities. I'm wondering, Ashok, I'll give this one to you first. How are we structuring teams and upskilling the talent to ensure we have speed, alignment, and impact?
I think mostly if you talk about at the end of the day, it's a business aligned, right? So primarily, right, if different companies have a different reporting structure, right? Irrespective of the case, whether it is a CIO reporting to a CTO or a CFO, right? It varies by each and every company, right? Based on the way how things have been successful, right? At the end of the day, is primarily is how the teams are aligned together to meet the business goals, right? Whether it is for protecting the resources, like for students or government agency, or expanding the business, right? That's the end goal. And then the way how we work primarily is that what are the target for that particular year, whether it is adding more products into the company or improving the efficiency of it, right? How do you align your team's initiatives or projects to meet that objectives? How we are doing it, right? So that way, it's a win-win situation for the individual and for the company.
I love it. I love it. Brad, you have got to have seen many examples of how organizations are, responding to this need out there. So curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting topic because it goes, I mean, certainly AI is it fits into this topic very well, but even closer to home and more immediate of an impact is this world of Broadcom. It's or upskilling the organization and how that affects different groups is interesting. I won't put Kris and Ashok on the spot in terms of what their infrastructure looks like, but just from what I see in my day to day is you certainly see a lot of organizations looking for alternatives out there, and the upskilling your team or understanding the capabilities of your team is really where is one of the primary assessments of where it goes at the end of that. It sure, maybe you get to the end of that assessment and you could save a few shekels here and there, although sometimes that's not always the case. But more of the concerns, if you're going to change your entire platform to something that maybe isn't as well known in the organization or as proven, whatever that might be, no need to name out specific platforms, but you're putting a lot of risk into the organization, right? It's a lot of risk of can my team handle it? And at the very top of the chain, you're putting your job on the line if things don't go quite as planned, where maybe that 20-30% premium, whatever it is compared to the alternative 40-50% premium even might be worth it. And then of course, this conversation applies to AI in terms of there's a lot of things that are appealing to the organization. It's really interesting to hear, Kris's example of, talk about, our jobs are just, how do they really matter in the grand scheme of things? Then you have Kris share his example, and it's like, this very, very powerful example of, potentially how AI can help, stop something before anything bad happens, by catching a pattern that otherwise never would have been detected. So, uh, uh, but being able to not just rely on your vendors, I mean, I totally agree with what Ashok said earlier. It's so much about people and process before technology. I mean, for the most part, most vendors, ours included, or our industry, I should say, the competition is so tight. It's on a personal level, it's like, okay, do I go with AT&T or Verizon? Do I have a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola? Don't get me wrong, there are nuances to each, and it depends on each individual use case. But so many of these industries, the competition is so fierce. And even if somebody is a little bit behind, they find a way to catch up in 12, 24 months. And it's more about, what can we do to upskill and uplift the folks in the organization, so the people and process is there, and then whatever technology we bring in after that can fit in seamlessly. So don't wouldn't say I have the answer per se, but I do agree that I think that's an underrated of underrated importance of how much that really matters in Kris and Ashok's probably daily life and job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember this challenge well. I put my CTO hat on and think about it. And I would definitely, get the people in place and know what my processes were, at least to the 80% mark with something like this. But then when I selected the tools, I always made sure that my vendors could bring to the table some of that supplemental, that fine detailed training to upskill my staff. Are you seeing a lot of that from your perspective at Veeam as well, Brad?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, right? You should hold your vendors to the fire. What are they going to do that's going to, if they're going to bring in this net new tool, what is it that you're going to provide my people that are going to make this be a seamless transition and make sure they can get up to par with it as quickly as possible. And yeah, absolutely, of course. Those are services provided by us and it's critical. So yeah, that's a great point, Joseph.
Excellent. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, some of our listeners today are undoubtedly relatively new to the chief suite, to the C suite, or maybe perhaps they're on their way to arriving there. And since we've got a panel of chief C-level officers here, let's talk a little bit about what it takes to make it to the C-level in the technology and security space. Kris, I want to go to you first. Which past roles prepared you best for your current CIO seat?
It's interesting. I think about that a lot. I think about, I give advice to, younger people these days and do a little bit of mentoring when I can. And, what I don't know that it's roles. I mean, I came up from the bottom in this. I didn't come like most people do in a school district that come from a teaching background. I went to college for computer science. I started work on a mainframe in a school district, and had worked myself up from the ground up there. But one of the things that I tell younger people is, figure out, you've got to be looking up in the organization to see where your priorities fit with the people above you, and then push on those and figure out how you can adapt your other priorities to match the people. At this point in time that, I have one boss and she has five publicly elected bosses, but that's it above me. And but I still have to, think of on a daily basis, how do my priorities match what our publicly elected board, um, you know, wants to see happen, and how does the evolution of our technology infrastructure support their vision and their goals and their strategic plan that they've set, that the community has informed them in. So it's always kind of looking just above you to figure out where the organization is going, and then figure out how to adapt your technology priorities, um, to move in that direction. There are times when you have to try and move that direction above you too, and that's always a challenge. But for the most part, it's reacting and adapting the goals that you have developed for your own career or your own departments or your own people and your infrastructure, and figuring out how that fits into the goals of the organization or the goals of your CEO or boss above you. Yep.
Oh, I love it. And you brought up something really interesting. You said you worked your way up from like a mainframe position to the chief role.
Mhm.
And knowing the organization and how it functions at all of those levels along the way has got to be invaluable as you are trying to influence, the direction that's
Mhm.
coming down from above you, or looking
Yep.
for the new strategy that's going to align with your organizational priorities because you know the organization so well. So probably every role that you've had has contributed to in some way.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. Ashok, how about you? What were the roles in your career path that prepared you best for the CISO role?
Yeah, so primarily I think there are different things. One is actually right, build your own domain expertise so that so that way you just can be ready for the next role, right? And then the second one is that right, make sure that you're not the single point of failure. So that means if you want to grow up in your career path, make sure that you have a successor who can take your role. If you can prove that, then there is always an opportunity to come to you saying that, hey, you are ready for the next role, right? So primarily make sure that you have a team who can actually take up your current role so that you are ready to take the next level, right? So that is something to be. And then the third one is that I make sure that when you are trying to build your projects and etc., make sure that all the task which is an action item for your leadership team is covered under your activity. So primarily, if you are able to solve your boss problem, that means, right, you are solving them, right, you are ready for that particular next role. So that is a one way of helping your boss and also getting yourself ready for that one, right? And then the other one you also need to practice is that how do you present yourself to the board? So that is something you can get some trainings or know, have some mentors. Primarily at the end of the day, when you go to the leadership team, you need to know how to present it to the board. So getting yourself equipped for that particular one is very critical. And then join some of these forums, right, and things like that, where you actually brand yourself to the market saying that you are ready for the next level role. So networking and a brand awareness of yourself is going to be very critical to get to that next level.
Oh, that's some great insight and wisdom that you're sharing there, Ashok. And I really like the fact that you brought up like what you can do to make your own next promotion that much easier for your boss, right? So if you've got a competent number two that looks like they're ready to step into your role at any moment, it makes it really easy for leadership to say, yeah, this person's ready for something next, and I don't have any concerns about the job that they're leaving behind. That's wonderful. And the three B's for talking to the board, right? Be
Yeah.
brief, be brilliant, and be gone. Those are all great advice for aspiring executives in the field. Brad, do you have any thoughts on this that you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not a CIO like my friends here, but I'll definitely give general advice in terms of when I reflect on my career and what's brought me success. Couldn't agree more with the more you can make your boss look good and solve his or her priorities, the better. I will say, so much of it is just the desire and want, right? Like, I think that's over 50% of it. If you have that passion, that motivation, that self-starter capabilities, as kind of cheesy as that sounds, but there's so much truth in that. I think that's half the battle. The rest of it is, I look back on just mentors that have been so critical to me and to seek those mentors out, to find people in the organization that you admire or aspire to be. And, it's pretty rare, and by rare, I would say never, I've seen somebody turn down the opportunity to spend 30 minutes to talk about themselves. So what I mean by that is if there's somebody in the organization or outside your organization that you um, admire or you want to learn from, don't hesitate to reach out. Reach out and worst case scenario, it's 30 minutes. I'm sure you're going to learn something new. Best case scenario, they're willing to take you under their wing and mentor you, and that can lead to so much success.
That is a fantastic point. Over my career, I can count on one hand how many requests from the hundreds of employees that I've worked with, uh, somebody making that request to me, like, "Hey, can I have 30 minutes on your calendar to just talk about, career path and trajectory?" It's a very rare thing, and I would accept that offer from anybody
Yeah.
in my role if I thought I could be of help. So I think that's some real sage advice. Thanks for sharing that, Brad.